Committee Room 21. Signed. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound. Committee Room 21. Sound.
Thank you very much. Good morning, members, and welcome to the Committee for Procedures. Just to say to you all, I'm glad to see you and you're here and survived that terrible storm. Just to advise members that this meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. You're welcome to use your mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and all devices are muted. It's not permitted to take photographs or record any of the meeting. Members, having had the papers, could I check to see if any of you have wish to make a declaration of interest today? Nope. Okay, thank you. And then we go on to apologies, and we're aware today that apologies from Robbie Butler and Orlea Flynn. Trevor Clark is here. He's just popped out of the room for a second. Has anyone else any other apologies? No. Okay, thank you. Members, will move on now to draft minutes. The draft minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of January are at pages 5 to 8 of the meeting pack. And just checking, members, you've had a chance to look at those. Are you content that the minutes are a true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting held on the 15th of January? I'm seeing nodding heads there, so if you're happy with that, then I shall sign those minutes.
Oh, sorry, turn it.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. Members, the next section is agenda item 3, which is matters arising, and there are no current matters arising to cover. Moving then on to agenda item 4, which is an inquiry into the extension of Standing Order 27A, voting by proxy. Research paper on the proxy voting on long-term illnesses. Members, just to remind you that in October 2024, the committee agreed that proxy voting in plenary for other categories such as long-term illness, bereavement and or absence on official assembly business would be the first of the 3 longer-term priority work areas to be progressed. Terms of reference for an inquiry, the approach to be taken and an indicative timescale were subsequently agreed at our meeting on the 27th of November last year. The terms of reference can be found in your packet, page 24. Members, just to inform consideration of the potential new categories for proxy voting in plenary, the committee commissioned research papers on the position in other legislators. The first research paper, which covers the provision of proxy voting for long-term illness, is now available and can be found at pages 13 to 23 of your meeting pack. And we're joined today by Assembly researcher Ray McCaffrey, who will brief the committee on that paper and answer any questions. Ray, you're very welcome. Good to see you. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Well, as you can see, the paper's pretty straightforward. It's just a short briefing note. So I'll just really spend probably a few minutes just going over the key points. So House of Commons, Scottish Parliament and the Senate all have provision for proxy voting in relation to long-term illness. In terms of the House of Commons, provision for a proxy vote on the grounds of long-term illness or injury was included in the proxy voting scheme in October 2022. This expired at the end of the 2019 Parliament. So in May 2024, the Chair of the Procedure Committee wrote to the Leader of the House requesting that the provisions be extended and actually placed on a permanent footing. Otherwise they would expire when an election was called, but no action was taken at that time, so the arrangements expired. Then, following the general election, a motion from the Leader of the House of Commons to allow proxy voting for long-term illness was published. The House agreed that motion and the temporary provision was put in place. That will expire at the end of the 2024-25 parliamentary session. So there was a debate around this, and during that debate, the Leader of the House, Lucy Powell MP, said she had asked the Procedure Committee to provide recommendations on the proxy voting scheme. And probably one of the areas that the committee will likely look at is this extension for long-term illness and injury. So the shadow leader of the House supported the motion, but he did raise a number of issues. So firstly, he says that if a member does have a serious long-term illness or injury, it is reasonable that that member can still exercise his or her vote, even if absent. But he wanted some clarity on the threshold. So, for example, he asked who decides whether a particular member has or has not met the threshold and what sort of evidence will be required. And he raised the issue of, would it be a doctor's certificate? In response, the Leader of the House said that she agreed that these were issues that the Procedure Committee could explore. And she raised the point that perhaps requiring notes from consultant-level doctors about reasons for absence is fairly onerous. There are certain illnesses that fall into the category, and questions have been raised in the past by members and others about some of how those decisions have been reached. And she said, she raised the example of, for example, a member undergoing treatment for cancer. She was quite adamant that she wouldn't want, in those circumstances, that a member was unable to apply for a proxy vote. So that is something that the House of Commons Procedure Committee is looking at. They opened its inquiry on the 26th of November last year. I think their call for evidence ends around the end of February this year. So I think it'll be interesting to see what conclusions they reach. And members, you can see on the page I've laid out both the proxy voting scheme and the proxy voting guidance for the House of Commons. So if you just look at the guidance, it says you're eligible to apply for the scheme if you have a statement from a hospital consultant stating that, for reasons of serious long-term illness or injury, you're unable to vote in divisions for a period of 1 month or more. The application has to be assessed by the Parliamentary Health and Wellbeing Service, who will then make a recommendation to the Speaker, and then it's up to the Speaker to make the decision as to whether or not to grant the proxy voting arrangement. The arrangement can last for a minimum of 1 month and a maximum of 7 months in the first instance. A member may be granted a single time-limited extension, but on those occasions you will need to, the member will need to submit a further statement from a hospital consultant to the Parliamentary Health and Wellbeing Service. And then the scheme sets out how members should apply. For example, email the Parliamentary Health Service with the subject line proxy vote application, and then you have to also provide the statement from the hospital consultant, the name of the member who has agreed to be your proxy, and the dates on which you wish your proxy voting arrangement to begin and end. Members are generally not expected to be present on the parliamentary estate whilst holding a proxy vote, but if for exceptional reasons a member is intending to be present on the parliamentary estate, they must say so in their application. And then, members, moving on to the Scottish Parliament and the Senate, it's much more straightforward. The Scottish Parliament's proxy voting scheme doesn't offer any actual additional information on the definition of a serious long-term illness or injury, although it does say that the anticipated duration of the proxy should be stated. And an official from the Scottish Parliament confirmed for the purposes of the research that the presiding officer does not require documentation in terms of medical certificates, letters from doctors, etc., before granting a request for a proxy vote. In terms of the Senate, the paper just sets out the relevant standing orders. In terms of eligibility, a member must notify the presiding officer of their intention to take leave and provide any additional documentation or forms of notification that the presiding officer deems appropriate. And again, the usual duration of the dispensation to vote by proxy is for a minimum of 4 weeks and a maximum of 6 months. And again, in exceptional circumstances, the presiding officer can use their discretion to extend the duration of a proxy voting arrangement for reasons of long-term illness. And again, for the purposes of the research, officials from the Senate advised that there has only been one instance of a request for a proxy vote on the grounds of long-term illness being received and accepted. In that case, the presiding officer did not require any additional documentation beyond the written notification of the reason and the dates that the member had provided. However, the officials did advise that it would be for the presiding officer to decide on a case-by-case basis. And members, that's really the key point. So on the one hand, you have the House of Commons, which requires fairly significant evidence. And on the other hand, you have both the Scottish Parliament and the Senate. Scottish Parliament doesn't have any provisions in place to ask for evidence. The Senate does, but in the one instance of it happening, the presiding officer did not seek any additional information. So members, happy to try and answer any questions if members have any.
Members, just to ask you if you could raise your hand or wave frantically at me, those who are online, if you have any questions. Ray, if I could just start off. The House of Commons and the Scottish Parliament use the term serious long-term illness or injury, and Welsh Parliament says long-term illness or injury. So the definition, as you've said, of that term is not defined in either of the standing orders. The case of Scotland and Wales, the responsibility to assess an application is solely with the Speaker. Do we know, as part of that process, obviously there would be an application for the proxy vote. Is there a meeting or anything with the Speaker from the person? I'm just thinking that may not be possible if somebody's seriously ill.
Somebody's seriously ill, and not as far as I'm aware. I think it's a paper-based exercise, Chair, rather than a face-to-face meeting. I suppose other officials, I mean, it says the Speaker, it's likely that other officials will be involved at some stage. But in terms of the scheme, there's no provision for a face-to-face meeting. And depending on the illness, it may not be realistic and even to have a face-to-face meeting. Sure.
Okay. And the House of Commons Procedures Committee are considering what constitutes long-term illness. Now, they're very different because they do have to provide information from a medical person. But as part of its review, is it looking at that, isn't it, the definition?
I think it's looking at the definition. I think almost more importantly, it's looking at the evidence that's going to be required. Because I think when you have the Leader of the House saying it's onerous, that could give an indication that maybe they're minded to step back from that. They'll probably look at what Scotland and Wales do as well, and even if by the time if we have any provisions in place. So it could be that they feel that asking members to go through those steps is too much, but they might find that no, that it's reasonable. I suppose at any one time you're only going to have, well, you would think you're only going to have a very few members availing of this, really. But the procedure committee are looking at all that in the round.
You would hope that there would be very few members would.
Well,
have
hopefully,
access
yes,
to
of
it,
course.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when we have it already in place that whenever the parental leave for proxy voting comes into play here, that there's a process for that, and that's being decided now and cleared by the Speaker's office. I noted that there's in the Scottish Parliament, there's a publication of a person who's on proxy. Do we know what sort of detail is included in that? I take it because they are not asking for medical evidence. There's nothing like that. It's just simply such an one has been offered or has applied and has been successful for a proxy vote.
Has been accepted, yes. I mean, well, I couldn't see how any medical information would be shared in that instance, Chair.
Yeah, it's just a case. I think it'll be blatantly obvious if someone is off on maternity. Well, it could be blatantly obvious if somebody's off on parental leave, or they're off for illness leave. I'm very aware just of sharing the that confidentiality. Members, just turning to yourselves now. Is there anyone else has any questions for Ray on this? Danny, you have your hand up, and Sinead then after, and then Militia. Danny, go on ahead. Sorry.
Thank you very much for that, Ray. There's just a couple of questions. Obviously, it's interesting to see the differences across the different parliaments. Two questions. The first one in option D there in the Westminster situation, in cases of risk-based exclusion from the parliamentary estate, what does that refer to? Is that about COVID? Is that about social distancing?
No, that refers to members who have been accused of assault or sexual, I must say, assault or sexual assault. They can be excluded from the estate while an investigation is ongoing. So in that case, they may be eligible for a proxy vote in certain circumstances. So that's nothing to do with long-term illness, actually.
Okay, no, I just wanted to check that. And the second one, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, and again, it's not maybe not very relevant to long-term illnesses, but you'd mentioned there could be in circumstances a member may be present on the parliamentary estate, but still have the option, take up the option to have a proxy vote in Westminster.
Yeah, so it's expected that you won't be present on the parliamentary estate, and I think it says yeah, the actual guidance says for exceptional reasons, they can provide the Speaker with advice whilst being present on the parliamentary estate that they should be eligible to hold a proxy vote. I don't know in what circumstances that would be if you have a long-term illness. Obviously, illness could be physical, it could be mental, but the expectation is that you won't be present on the parliamentary estate, and only in exceptional circumstances will you be granted a proxy vote if you say to the Speaker, well, actually, for whatever reason, I need to be on the parliamentary estate.
Okay.
But
Thank you, Ray.
the norm is that you won't be present.
Yeah.
And I'll go now to our Deputy Chair, Sinead.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Ray, for that. Listen, I know and I appreciate we're dealing with long-term illness here, but I just wanted to ask the question: is there arrangements in any of the other parliaments for a short-term bout of illness, a shorter, medium term, something sudden? Is there arrangements in any of the other parliaments for something that covers that, or do they solely just look at long-term illness or injury?
Well, it's long term in terms of standing orders and any guidance. I suppose they place time limits on it. So I think the Senate there is a minimum of 4 weeks and a maximum of 6 months. But if you're speaking of maybe 2-3 days or a week, no, there's no provision as far as I'm aware and as far as I can see in standing orders and any guidance that would cover that.
Okay, I just wanted to ask the question just to see was there provision for anything of that nature, but that's fine. It's okay. Thanks, Ray.
And Melissa?
And again, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah. Just I note that in the case of Westminster, that it's a consultant that's required there in order to produce evidence as such. And that would also indicate that probably a fairly high bar there in many respects, is it? That's not the case. And, why is there such a difference, that from a consultant to actually no paper trail in other situations?
It is a high bar, yes. In terms of the reasons why, that's just what the House agreed. But as I say, I think there's possibly an expectation that level of evidence could be reduced in any review undertaken by the Procedure Committee. One of their recommendations could be to reduce that. It is fairly onerous to ask for a consultant level note. The House agreed it. Scotland and Wales are really at the other end of the spectrum. Scotland certainly are in terms of not requiring anything, but I think there's possibly a chance that the level of evidence could be reduced in the House of Commons following the Procedure Committee review. But that is a matter for the Procedure Committee. They may feel that the current arrangements are working well. But when you have the Leader of the House saying that she feels it's onerous, perhaps gives you an indication of the direction of travel, maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it sort of stands out for me. Getting access to a consultant to get a letter like this actually be putting more pressure on our health system. But anyone else have any questions for Ray? Thank you very much, Ray. That's all our questions so far. I think it gives us some food for thought as to the very different approaches that are taken, and especially if the House of Commons may well be reviewing, as you say, the onerous position that a person who's very unwell has to go through. I appreciate it's a very important thing to be available, but actually making your vote still be able to be used is important too. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ray.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Members, just the consideration of the policy and principles relating to potential extension of Standing Order 27A to cover long-term illness is scheduled to take place at the next meeting on the 12th of February. So if you want to have a think about what we've heard from Ray about that period of illness, the amount of time, the time scales, perhaps we could have something, as Sinead has highlighted, for it may not be serious long-term illness, but to be honest, I don't want to be sitting beside somebody who has flu or something like that. So, we'll need to think about that. So we'll come back to it on the 12th of February. Members, moving on to agenda item 5, which is the... sorry if I jumped one there. No, I don't think so. Yes, so just when it says the Forward Work Programme. Yeah. So an updated Forward Work Programme can be found at page 26 of your meeting pack. Members, can I just ask you if you agree the Forward Work Programme, unless of course anybody has any information or clarification on that. So you're happy enough to proceed with that Forward Work Programme at page 26? Yeah. I'm seeing nodding heads and no dissent. Members, a report of the committee's study visit to the Scottish Parliament on the 4th and 5th of December 2024 is at pages 27 to 52 of the meeting pack. As part of the research on electronic voting, we went to Scotland, as you know. During the visit, members attended the chamber for decision time to witness any electronic votes, but of course none were taken at that time. A link to the decision time for amendments to the Social Security Bill, which included 2 divisions, decided with the use of electronic voting, however, has been included in the report for information, and we're going to show that at this meeting, hopefully, technology upholding. This example illustrates the speed at which votes can be carried out and the decision reached. The presiding officer declares the vote open and asks the members to cast their vote. 60 seconds later, the presiding officer declares the vote closed, and approximately 30 seconds after that, the result of the vote is announced. So we're going to be playing that recording now, so just bear with us, and hopefully those online will see it as well.
Okay. So this is the first time we've done this, so
Yeah.
let me see. Play all. No, sorry. Video and
I
audio.
think it's that wee square in the corner there and make it full screen size. This one
Yeah.
here. All right, members.
Oh, there is a bit.
The vote is closed.
Sorry, I must have started that earlier.
Doesn't matter.
Let's see the next one. That was a vote.
The result of the vote on amendment number 21 in the name of Paul O'Kane is yes 51, no 60. There were 7 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 22 in the name of Paul O'Kane, already debated with amendment 3. Paul O'Kane, to move or not move?
Moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. The question is that amendment 22 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 22 in the name of Paul O'Kane is yes 50, no 67. There were no abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 4 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 2. Cabinet
Members, so hopefully you've saw that video there. If you just nod and let me know that you've saw that. You can see how quickly that it can be done in the Scottish Parliament using their desk buttons. What I'll do now is turn to those who were on the visit. Now, we don't have Robbie with us today, but Danny and, I'm just reading across who I can see on screen, Danny and Militia were with us. To start off with, I'll give my impressions. As you can see there, the Assembly Chamber, the Shannon Chamber, is very different to our own setup. When we met with representatives of the Conservatives and Labour when we were over, they talked, both gentlemen had been members of Westminster at one stage, and they missed the fact that they didn't have lobbies anymore. But what I would say is the setup within their chamber compared to our chamber is very different. There is a lot more ability, I think, within our chamber for people to go over and have a chat with someone or make eyes to someone. There it was very, an individual sat with their party members, didn't move, and there wasn't an awful lot of chat. They also complained that unlike this building where there are plenty of spaces where people can meet and have a chat, that there wasn't so much an ability for parties to cross over with each other. One thing I would say about seeing that voting is people will need to know in advance exactly how they're voting, because it's a very short time frame. Now, I think it doesn't come across there, but if you make a mistake, you can change your vote within that window. So I think that where Scotland, who have had this voting system from day one of their parliament, we would be changing to a completely different system, and they were complaining about the interaction as opposed to how the voting took place. Now, the other thing to note is that the electronic voting in Scotland enables people to come in remotely, and we witnessed that when we were over, where people were able to come in as they can do here in a committee, and the remote voting then, it needs that electronic voting to be able for those guys to vote. I'm personally, I'm not mad keen on remote voting for the chamber, and it wouldn't be in place for us anyway. If we were taking that forward as part of electronic voting, it would need a significant agreement from all the parties, and to be honest, I don't think we would get that. So I'm going to turn now to Militia and to Danny. Militia, I'll come to you first, because Danny got the first questions the last time. And just to see what your thoughts are about what you saw in Scotland and what you've seen today in the video. Oh, have we? You're on mute. Still not hearing.
We're just checking the thing. We're just checking.
Just checking,
Hello?
Militia. Yes, we've got you now. Thank you.
Okay. Again, too, it's very, very impersonal. The system that they actually have there. Now, you might wonder the use of word impersonal, but on reflection too, you see you're not able to see how other people did vote. Say within that particular chamber, the chamber itself, as we described it, as very like a lecture.
Oh, we've gone off again, Militia. Sorry. Sorry, we just check and see if it's on our end.
Yeah.
Yes, we're back. Sorry. No, off again. Sorry, Militia, I think we're having trouble on our end.
Yeah, I think that's where it is.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Hopefully it'll
Yeah.
stay. Sorry.
Well, I was describing the chamber a wee bit like a lecture theatre, and that they were all sitting behind their desks, and you didn't see whether the person next to you done their homework or not, in a sense. But I'd have much preferred to say our own system that even that where you're able to visually see, in fact, how it is that people do vote in that, even though you can see in terms of time spent when there is a division, that it's a whole lot more efficient, like in that respect. But other than that, I don't honestly see the advantages of it in a whole lot of ways.
Okay. Thank you, Militia. And Danny?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, before we went to the Parliament, I had quite a sort of set up idea that, I was very much in favour of electronic voting and the time that would be saved. It was interesting now to meet with the two leaders from the Conservative and the Labour Party who did raise objections to it, and they did place a lot of value on the ability to go and have conversations with other members in the lobbies. Now, as mentioned, their setup certainly is very, very different to ours, and it does, as Militia said, it does feel like a lecture theatre. You're looking at the back of the person while they're speaking, and the parties do tend to sit in groups, and there doesn't seem to be that element of interaction that we seem to have a bit more here. I thought there were some benefits to it. Certainly the time of a vote, and you can see that there from the video. It would have taken us 15 minutes to get through those votes, I think. 15, possibly longer. The other element, the way they do their votes collectively, so they save up all their votes throughout the day and then have a decision time at 5 o'clock. So, everybody is ready to vote on those specific items from 5 p.m. onwards. I think you can see there's a benefit there that members are able to separate out a time to get involved in all the voting. On balance, I do think there would be benefit, and certainly from hearing from other members who have been here before, when we're talking about legislation and we have multiple votes, 10, 20 amendments that all have to be voted on, you can see how the time saving could be stacked up quite quickly. But certainly I thought it was very, very educational, and very much appreciated the trip and learned a lot from it. So thank you very much.
And just Sinead and William, if you have any questions, please just jump in, because I appreciate you weren't there, and Trevor, sorry, you weren't there at the visit. One thing I would say, having been here at the end of the last mandate, for instance, and the amount of legislation that was coming through, the groupings and, the votes, my goodness, we spent hours and hours going through the lobby. I appreciate what Militia says, because you have no idea how parties have voted. I don't know whether they've any chance to discuss amongst each other in advance, or, if there's any sort of negotiations that way. The other interesting thing is that their offices are in another building, so they physically have to go out of the main building and move around. So it is quite disjointed. Whereas here we could pop into each other's offices quite easily, during the plenary sessions. I personally, when I saw their setup, I could understand why they didn't have that sort of collegiate working. But the electronic voting, I have to say, seeing it in action, when people know that they've got a vote coming, it's so much quicker. And while we can enjoy a bit of a chat together and a discussion in the lobbies, it does add a significant amount of hours to the day. It's interesting, as Danny has said, the order of business seems to complete by 5. It may run on a little longer, but it's recognised at the end of the day, every vote in Scotland is taken one after the other at the end of the working day. So it's not necessarily an onerous one. There may not be a huge number of votes. There might actually be, if there's legislation, a huge number of votes, but it's all done at one time. I don't know how well that could work for ourselves, but members, I found the visit extraordinarily useful. The video is very useful just to see how that happens. From speaking to others, they didn't, other than saying you need to have good Wi-Fi and it does break down occasionally, and they had shifted to telephone voting as opposed to the buttons. So that concerned me a little, that the technology could collapse on us in this building, but other than that, I was a bit the same as Danny. I thought electronic voting, not a problem at all. Can't wait to see something like that, making it so much quicker. When I was over there, the concerns did raise my eyebrows, but thinking of it since we came back, as Malaysia and Danny has said, their setup is very different to ours, and it's amazing actually how much working across parties and agreements and disagreements can happen in the chamber and outside of the chamber compared to them. I am still interested in the electronic voting, but to put it in place to even test it would be a significant change and an amount of money. So we don't have to take or make any decisions today. All I would ask is that we note the report of the study, unless anyone else has any questions. Sorry, just double check. We'll note. Sorry, yes, Sinead.
Not a question as such, but just when picking up on Danny's point, and you alluded to it there as well about how they take all their votes at the end of the day. I would like to get chatting to Danny and then others who were on the trip, because I know, Danny, you said that you thought that could be useful. I just sort of alarm bells went off in my head straight away, because if we're dealing with a ton of legislation and amendments and we're voting on clauses, and you're doing that all in a big chunk, I could see where there could be confusion there that could cause, is this what are we voting on this now, or what is next? Whereas when you take it in order and you vote after or at the time, it's a lot more streamlined. But listen, as you said, Tara, we can tease it out in following upcoming meetings or whatever. But it just, I thought everybody would come back thinking this was a great thing, and we wouldn't be able to get it in quick enough. But it's interesting to see when you physically see it in action that it raises more questions than solutions. So listen, happy to talk that out at further meetings, but just wanted to flag that.
Just as part of our meeting, Sinead, this stuff at the end of the day, we know from previous mandates, the groupings, you could have a list of amendments, and amendment 1, 2, 3 are in different groupings. So number 1's voted on maybe in the first group, number 3's voted on the second group, and it can be chaos. Sorry, William, I saw your hand there. Do you want to come in?
And just a comment. I would remain to be convinced that there's massive benefits in electronic voting. For me, in presentations we got earlier, there was some legislators reverted back from electronic voting. So that would raise concerns for me whenever you see some legislators going back and reverting back from electronic voting. It just wasn't all that was made out to be.
Yeah. Especially if the technology breaks down, you would have to go back to voting in person. What I would say is the whips did say that they have WhatsApp groups that they communicate with they don't even run around each other and talk to each other. They do a WhatsApp group, and they provide tables where the vote, where the amendments are and the groupings of the votings and things like that there. But I can't see how the end of the day voting would work for ourselves. I think it would just be too disjointed. But it's just to note this. Sorry, Trevor.
I think, firstly, I apologise. I didn't get on the trip, so I had the flu. I was looking forward to going to it. I've always been sceptical of this idea, and that's been no secret. But I still was going with an open mind, and I apologise. Convenience or inconvenience with the flu at the time. Actually, the other thing strikes me today, and this whole notion of votes at the end of the day screams that at times it's difficult to get a good quorum in this building. This screams that some people just would use this as an abuse it, in the sense that they'll just not come up until the 5 o'clock session to come and register their votes. Most parties probably struggle at times with members trying to escape, but I think that would make it much more difficult if you suggest to members, come in at 5 o'clock, we're doing all our votes, because you'll probably see them all come up to driveway at 4:45.
Yeah, I think to be honest, the way the Speaker and others have said is it's the chamber is an important place, and I don't think that the 5 o'clock version of this would work for us. But the electronic voting is one that.
Well, the traffic's bad in Belfast around that time as well. So
That's it. But it's the electronic voting. It's gonna. When you think about, as Danny says, we saw there that the vote was called. 60 seconds later, the vote was closed, and then it took a very short period of time to get the amount done. Like Malaysia, I didn't like the fact that you couldn't actually, because there's no lobbies, you can't see how people are voting. I know that when we saw the test, there was a screen in the assembly where you could see sort of who, or we would have to decide on how we would.
So you're not suggesting that you hold off your vote to see where people go before you vote? I thought you'd done it based on the legislation or whatever the debate was about, as opposed to looking to see where people went to vote.
No, not that way. But it's just, I think from parties always watch like a hawk to see where people have voted after they've done theirs.
Just clarification.
But no, I think even to know, I would say, having been a whip before, I would like to see, has my people all gone through, where are they all at, is the numbers right there? It's that interest, you're just being called out the figures at the end.
Well, and that's a good point. Actually, it was one day last week, I think it was, one of my members almost went to the aye lobby when they should have been in the no. And there's a danger in this in terms of the keypads, I think, and people then trying to withdraw or change their vote when it's too late.
Yeah.
I just think it's problematic.
Yeah, I think the fact that Scotland has had it from day one means that they're very used to doing this. It would be something that you would probably see quite a lot of pressure on whips to make sure that there's guidance provided, yeah. But this report just is for noting today, and we will still come back to this again. It's the second of our longer term objectives, so we will have more to do on this to consider before we make our final decision of whether we'll introduce electronic voting into standing orders. Is everybody content to note that report then? And thank you very much for all who went along, and of course to our own staff who worked really hard to make sure that all the meetings were there and we were all in the right place at the right time, and the millions of steps that we did while we were there. My goodness, I've never been so grateful for an assembly to be close together. But thank you very much to our clerks for all their hard work. And Ray McCaffrey was over with us, so that from that researcher's perspective, that he was there to witness what we were witnessing. So it was really useful. And of course, our thanks to the Scottish Government for allowing us in, and to the Speaker there. They gave us a lot of time, and the Speaker spent time with us, and it was grateful. Should we perhaps, I think we've already written to the Speaker to thank them, but I think it's important, if anybody wants to reach out to any of the parties to have a discussion on their electronic voting, please do, because it's that one-to-one discussion with peers just like us, that we can really find out where the issues are and where the bonuses are. So thank you very much. And everybody content to note that report then? Yeah, thank you. That okay, Danny? Sorry, were you raising your hand there? Yeah, no, sorry. So agenda item 6 is correspondence. In pages 54 to 58 of the meeting pack, correspondence received since the last committee meeting. The clerk to the Public Accounts Committee has written regarding its primacy over Northern Ireland Audit Office reports and its current inquiries. The correspondence is at pages 55 to 58 of the meeting pack. Members, just to note that if you could, because correspondence is more relevant to statutory committees than to standing committees. Are you content with that, to note? Yeah, thank you. Agenda item 7, chairperson's business. There's no chairperson's business. I'll just say that I was over with the Scotland visit. Agenda item 8 is any other business. Members, has anyone any other business they want covered? No, and if not, then the date, time and place of the next meeting will be Wednesday the 12th of February at 10 a.m. here in room 21. Members, thank you very much for today. I know that seemed quite quick, but it was very interesting to get that detail about the Scottish Parliament through for consideration. Members, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Bye.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.